All right. And hello, everybody. Thank you again for being with us this week. One more time, we here, my good friend Andy Gagliano from Gagliano Mortgage and Tony Alvarez from Keller Williams Hoover. We want to welcome you to this episode again. And remember, if you find this information and you find our videos very informative and you're learning something about it, just subscribe to our channel and give us a like, thumbs up. We really will appreciate that. And with not further introduction, Andy, how good you doing today?
I am well. I'm well. I don't know what the deal is, but I look years younger today in the video.
Most definitely. I think I have a slight idea why, but most definitely you look like 25 years younger than the last time I saw you.
I do. I do look a lot younger. Yeah, getting rid of all that old scruffy gray beard has knocked years off of my life. So
I have a friend who has a nice beard and everything, but he's great. Salt and pepper actually. And he told me, Tony, I would like to keep it, but it's the only way for me to keep my beard and looking good is I dye it, and I don't want to color my beard. It looks nice and everything. So he decided to shave it. I think I never see his face without a beard I think it's been like 7 years, something like that.
wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting. But that's a good thing. We always do things. I always say that I don't want to look like a picture. So I like to change from time to time.
I'll do the same thing. I used to not. I mean, I looked for years, just went the same. My hair, back when I had I'll say much more. It wasn't a whole lot more hair than this. It was always parted on the same side for decades. And now that I've gotten older, I just really it's facial hair that I kind of play around with more than anything, because I don't have enough hair up here to do anything with. I don't want to have the Trump comb over going on. The wind blows too much around Alabama, especially in the springtime. So
yeah,
it's fun to kind of play around with the beard some and facial hair and change it up. So last year I would trim once a week down to like a 1 or 2 trimmer setting, and then just let it go for the week. And then I'd trim it back again on Sunday or Monday and do it. And I did that the entire year. I think I'm gonna go more like this the whole year.
Yeah, it sounds better that way. Some calling what the 3-day beer or something like that.
Yeah,
barely. I'm trying to do the same. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Well, Andy, let me tell you something. There is a lot going on in the real estate world, and prices are not coming down dramatically like everybody thinks. But there is something that I noticed, and we know here, Birmingham, Alabama, we know is a well-kept secret among real estate investors. I've seen a lot of out-of-state investors investing over here, and they don't share that information with their friends or anybody like that. I have a couple from California. I have another one from Nevada. They bought some properties, and now they're moving up. They want to sell all those single-family homes and start buying apartment units.
Apartments. Yeah.
We don't have that many here in Birmingham, and for the cash flow, for the return on investment they want, in the areas they want to be, is going to be a little bit difficult to find something here in Birmingham. But we are looking into the Montgomery market.
Uh-huh.
A little bit down over there. So I'm going to be traveling a lot to Montgomery and analyzing properties and seeing what is a good investment for my client. We're going to be doing 1031 exchange. We're probably going to be talking about it on another time about 1031 exchange.
Yeah.
But something that caught my attention also is they keep talking about a lot of investors. I've been receiving a lot of calls. Some of the guys are new investors, and I do appreciate that. But what I don't like is when they say, I'm an investor, and they don't have a portfolio. They started.
Yeah.
And they want us realtors to waste our time looking for their property. And they still think they can get a $10,000-$20,000 property here in Alabama, where they're only going to have to invest another 10, and then they can sell it for $100,000. Yes, you can find it, but those are for the local investors and for the people that is well connected, know what they're doing, know where to look for. And believe me, one of those properties goes on the market within 3-4 hours, already is under contract with somebody.
Yeah.
It's just what it is. Now, I know in the mortgage industry, there is a lot of programs that investors, real estate investors, can use on the properties, especially when it comes to rehab. There is one that caught my attention that I believe is an FHA 203K. Am I correct?
Yeah, there's a FHA 203K loan out there, but the 203K is not available for investors, I don't believe. Let me double check this.
Yeah, I think that one is for somebody who wants to live in the property. Most definitely.
Correct.
Who's buying the property, because I did one, I remember a couple of years ago, and the person was purchasing the property to live in it. That's not for an investor. You are right. So 203K, the FHA 203K is not for investors. Now, what do you have available out there for investors, out-of-state investor who wants to buy a property and they need to be rehabbing?
Yeah. So we've got a couple of different options, but it really depends on what the goal is for that investor. Is their goal to buy, renovate, or rehab and hold that property, or to flip that property? And so if they want to hold the property, then we do have some options available there. We can do one of a couple of different things along those lines. We can do a construction loan, which would allow them to make an initial draw on the construction loan to purchase the home, take the seller out of the equation. Now the home is in their name, and any subsequent draws that they want to take would be used for the rehab or the renovation on the property. Once the house is fully renovated and complete, we then send an appraiser out there to determine that, yes, the house is complete and it is still worth what the appraiser said it was worth before the construction or the renovation ever started. And then once that's done, we can pay off that construction loan with a permanent loan that 30 years, 20 years, 15 years, whatever the investor wants as far as permanent financing is concerned. So that's one option there. Another option would be to look at doing a traditional repair renovation loan with Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, but those are going to be hard to get as well, because those loans, it's kind of similar with the FHA. Those loans really are designed for the owner-occupant. So it's going to be hard to do one of those. But we could also look at doing some privately held financing, some individual investor financing, where it would be structured very similarly to the construction loan, but that private investor would loan the money to the buyer, to the real estate investor, to purchase property, rehab it, and then we would come back and get some permanent financing to pay that real estate, that private investor off.
So in other words, if I acquire a property that needs to be rehabbed and I'm planning to buy it, rehab it, and rent it out, the best way to go will be to a private investor So I can acquire the property and do the rehab work. And then when it's done, apply for a conventional loan, just for example purposes, for a conventional loan, so I can pay that investor their money, and I continue, making my regular normal payments. And probably that would be a better option because the interest rate probably will be better than with a private lender, with a private loan. Not necessarily.
Yeah, the interest rates with the private investors can get to be pretty high, but here's the thing. I try to stress to my real estate investor clients that I'm working with on mortgages to not worry a whole lot with interest rates on temporary financing.
Correct.
Because, well, let me say this first. The financing to purchase a piece of property and rehab or renovate that property and that financing is going to be paid off with permanent financing later once the property is completely renovated. That initial financing, that's temporary financing. And so what I try to stress is, yes, no one wants to pay 12, 13, 14% interest on a mortgage. But when you look at what the true dollar cost is of a 12% or a 14% interest rate mortgage for a mortgage that you're only going to hold for 2 to 4 months, and you compare that with what the interest rate would be for traditional financing, the difference is negligible. And what I recommend for our real estate investor clients to look at is you really want to pay attention more to the costs associated with getting those loans. Your private investor loans typically are going to have lower closing cost than your institutional investors or your bank loans are going to have. So bank loans or institutional investors, typically lower interest rate, higher cost. Private investor, higher interest rate, lower cost. When you add up the dollars spent in interest and in closing cost, 9 times out of 10, that private investor financing is going to be a cheaper overall strategy for accomplishing the renovation or repairs to be done to that property that we are going to turn around and refinance it at a later date. So that's really where the focus should be. And it works the same way for somebody buying a house to live in it. You can't look at just the interest rate. You've got to look at the cost too. And 9 times out of 10, they're married together, meaning the higher the interest rate, the lower the cost. And the opposite is true. The lower the interest rate, the higher the cost. So for somebody that's going to live in a house as their primary residence, a question I always like to ask is, how long do you think you'll live in this home? And if somebody tells me, hey, I'm going to be a resident at the medical school until I do my 2-year, 3-year residency, and then I'm moving back home to Memphis or Indiana or California, wherever it is that they're from, then I've got to look at what are the interest costs in that mortgage, what are the upfront costs in that mortgage, and is that buyer better off getting a higher rate and lower cost because they know they're only going to live in that house for 3 years.
Yeah.
So that's really what I look at as a mortgage professional, because it's extremely important, and we've talked about this on these videos before. I'm a real estate investor myself, and I'm going to treat my clients the same way that I do for myself. I'm going to run those comparisons myself and look at the numbers, because the numbers have to make sense.
That is
And
correct. That is something that you and I would have in common because I'm an investor myself, and that's how I see things. If it doesn't make sense, I tell my client if it's something that I wouldn't buy, I wouldn't even recommend it.
Yeah.
We all have different goals. We all have different ways to do investments. Probably the way I do things is totally different the way you do things, and our goals are different. I still want to present you with the proposal with the property and all the dons and do and all
Yeah.
the ups and all the cons and everything. And at the end of the day, it's going to be my client decision, most definitely. And I think that's what make you and me, people like us, professionals like us, very reliable because we don't do this for the money.
Yeah.
This is not a paycheck that we are waiting for. We're actually doing this for reputation. We're doing this because we care. We genuinely and actually we do care for our clients, regardless if they're first-time home buyers, regardless if they're investors or not.
Yeah.
And with that said, also, if you pay attention more to the interest rate with one of these private lenders, you're right. You never will take that step to become a real estate investor.
No.
Let's look at the upfront cost. How much is going to cost you to do that? And remember, this is the first step. This is going to get your feet inside. You're going to get your foot wet and start doing real estate investment. And it's going to be depending on the type of property, depending on the work that needs to be done on the property, talking about 3 to 6 months tops. It is worth it.
Right.
Personally, I think it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. And, as an investor, you've got to look at if this is a property you're buying to fix up and hold, you've got to look at not just your cost associated, interest cost and hard cost, meaning closing cost associated with buying that property to fix it up, but look at your end result. How much do you have in the property or how much will you have in the property when the renovation is complete, and compare that with what the market value is going to be on that property. Are you building additional equity into that property for yourself, for your family? Because that's who's going to, if you hold that property until you're no longer of this earth, that's who's going to get it. If you structure it everything the right way, and you should, we should talk sometime about how to structure the real estate title and dealing with estate attorneys and things like that for planning purposes for people. But you are building more equity. And so I look at it like this personally, and I know you do too. If I can put $5,000 in closing costs into a deal, pay $1,500 in interest on that deal over a period of 3 months while it's being renovated, and I put $20,000 into it, I'm at $26,500 all in for my renovation repair work. But if it builds $40,000 in equity, $50,000 in equity, that's a no-brainer to me. I'm not going to moan and groan about $1,500 in interest.
No.
So, those are things that again, we have to look at and have to talk about, and we've got to see the bigger picture on these things as investors.
It depends also on your strategy, and what's going to be your exit strategy. One of my investors,
Right.
We keep talking about that exit strategy. He bought these properties 5-7 years ago, and that was his strategy: to buy them, rehab them, rent them for 5-7 years, build the equity, get some cash flow if you want to, and in 7 years he's selling it and doing a 1031 exchange so he can defer the capital gain taxes.
Yeah.
That to me, that's genius. That's no brainer, but that's his strategy.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Owning real estate as an investment is no different than starting a business. You should always have an exit strategy. To start a business and say, well, I'm creating a job for myself. No, that's not why you start one. You start one with the end goal in mind, because that's where you're working, what you're working towards every single day is that end goal. So real estate is no different. And like I said, when we started out talking about this, if someone's goal is to buy, renovate, and hold, that's a good option. If someone's goal, their end game, exit strategy is to buy, renovate, and flip, now we're talking about a different critter altogether, as we would say. And financing for those really are going to be the same couple of options. We have institutional investors, and they are going to have a little bit higher closing cost, a little bit lower interest rate. And on these flip properties, I'm talking a little bit lower interest rate, not much at all, compared to going to a private investor who's going to have lower closing cost and a higher interest rate. And one thing that I like about the private investors for a flip transaction is they've got their checks and balances in place. The private investors that I work with on fix and flips have all been flippers in the past. And if they see something they don't like, they say, I'm not real sure about this deal. I don't think this deal makes sense. And when another real estate investor, a former flipper, tells you, I don't think the numbers make sense, it's not so they can swoop in and pick this property up when you walk away from the deal and do it themselves. They're saying it doesn't make sense because, number one, they don't want to get their money tied up into a deal that goes south and they end up having to foreclose on. Number two, they want the real estate investor to make money. They're not doing flips anymore. They're providing the financing for flips. I can tell you, we did a couple of videos with me in the condo that I bought, the fix and flip. I'm 54 years old. The first flip I did, I was 25. There's a big difference in flipping a property at the age of 25 and flipping one at the age of 54. In 10 years, I'm not going to be in a crawl space jacking up floors. And yeah, I can hire people to do that, or I can simply give money to the real estate flippers and let them do the hard work and let them pay me 12, 13, 14% interest on the deal. And that's what these flippers are doing. They have a lot of experience flipping, and they're going to give, they're really kind of a backstop, so to speak, to not let you, the real estate investor, get into a transaction that may not make sense or may not work. And so I like dealing with the private investors that because of that. My institutional investors, they still have their checks in place, but you don't get that personal opinion.
Correct.
Going into the transaction. It is just simply a, hey, Tony, I'm sorry, the numbers don't make sense. See you later.
Correct.
Come back and see us for the next one, but we'll see you later, until that time rolls around. Whereas the private investors are going to say, hey, this doesn't make sense. Your costs are too high. Is there any way you can reel those costs back in some? Is it necessary to put new countertops in? Is it necessary to put new windows in? Are there some things you can dial back on your renovation cost so that this project does make sense? So that's really some options available to real estate investors who are looking to buy, fix, rent, and hold basically, or buy, fix, and flip.
Yeah.
And that's the two most popular strategies right now, for
Yes,
sure.
they are. Definitely. I have a client that we bought a home 2 years ago, and the reason he bought it because he wanted to live there, you know. So he started making the house. It was a fixer-upper, and put him all the nicest and expensive things in it.
Mhm.
Now he wants to sell it. Unfortunately, he is underwater because he has spent too much money fixing it because
Yeah.
he thought he was going to live there. And where this house is sitting in, the comps don't, it doesn't make sense. He actually going to be losing probably like $40,000 if he put him on the market. So I told him, these are the numbers. He keep pushing it. He don't want to see it. So I told him, you know what? Talk to another realtor if you want to. I cannot, and I'm refuse to lie to you and manipulate numbers just to make sure that you like what I said.
Right.
I want to come back 30 days later saying and lying to you again, saying, hey, the market changed. We need to reduce the price. That's not ethical to me. That's not the right thing to me to say either. A lot of people does. I don't. So regardless if you're an investor or not, regardless if you decide that you're going to live in the property or not, have a clear vision what you want to do with these properties. That way you're really not underwater with them if you decide to sell them. Do a little bit of an investigation of research, what is going on in the area, what materials can you use. That, if you decide to sell it, you can recoup some of that money.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're in the case of your client there, there's nothing stopping that client from putting that property on the market to rent and renting it for 2 to 5 years in hopes that the market turns, or it doesn't turn, but it continues to go up, and he's not $40,000 underwater on that deal. And if you think about it, even if his mortgage was more than what he could rent the property for per month, if it cost him $200, $300 out of his own pocket every single month, and he could afford it, there's the big caveat.
Yes.
And he can afford it without really restricting his lifestyle, then to do that for a period of 60 months, which is 5 years, hey, that's 12 grand. If I'm going to lose 12 grand, that's a lot over 5 years. That's a lot better than losing 40 grand today.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. And that's what I tell everybody, even if you're buying a house in a conventional way just to live over there, if it's not going to hurt your pocket deeply, that's a good deal.
Yeah.
That's a good deal. There is always risk on real estate, and that's what I love this industry, Andy. Most definitely.
Yes.
Anything else you want to add to this, Andy?
I don't think so. I think it's a great topic, and I get a lot of phone calls about the fix and flip deals, and I'm happy to have a conversation with anyone if they want to call and just walk through scenarios, because it as well as I do, HGTV's made the fix and flip extremely fashionable, because in a 30-minute time period, these investors are making $40,000, $50,000, $100,000. Of course, it doesn't take 30 minutes. It takes them several months to do it, but they make it look easy.
Yeah.
And the reason they make it look easy is because you don't become a flipper today and get a TV show tomorrow. They've been doing it for a long time. They've got a lot of experience doing it. Do they lose money? They absolutely do lose money on some deals. And one of the best flip shows I've ever seen, I think it was that Tarek and
Christina,
yeah, they went through and talked about some of their deals that were not great. And, to me, I thought that's fantastic, because that gives people a real world view of what it's like to flip homes. It's not all glam and glitz and fun. You know, there's a lot of headache and a lot of heartache and a lot of cuts and bruises and scrapes and bloodshed. And so I'm happy to have conversations with people about the process, because a lot of people have never done it before, but I'm happy to have that conversation, walk them through the process of the financing part of it. But when it comes to the actual real estate part of it, that's where I turn everyone over to a professional like Tony, who's going to answer questions about that part of it, because he's the expert in that. You know, you want someone he just told you, I'm not going to lie just to tell you something you want to hear, because that is crucial if you're flipping properties. You don't want someone to say, yes, I think you can buy this house for 200. I think you can put 40,000 into it, and I think you can sell it for $400,000, when the market's not going to bring 400. And so it's important to have someone who's going to shoot straight with you to say, yeah, you could put 40,000 into this $200,000 home and it'll be worth 280, 275. You know, so is it worth it for 10, 12, $15,000 profit? And that's the hard conversations you need to have with someone who's going to shoot you straight. And that's Tony.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you very much. So Andy, if people wants to have that conversation with you and start it and asking all questions about financing, how can they reach you, Andy?
Yeah, I can be reached at 205-979-4412. I'm at extension 1. If they want to talk to you about that flip that they got their eyeball on, how do they need to get you?
Just give me a call. It's pretty simple. 205-370-3248. I promise you, Andy and I, we're going to take care of you. And if we can do the deal, we'll do it. If we cannot, we're also going to let you know. Like Andy said, I'm a straight shooter. I'm pretty sure Andy is a straight shooter. In fact, I know he is. We're not going to lie to you. We're not going to say things that you want to hear or sweet talk to you. We go with facts, but the decision ultimately is going to be yours. So, Andy, thank you very much for being with us this week. It's been a pleasure seeing you again, my friend.
Yeah, looking forward to the next one.
And I'll see you next week. And you guys, remember, if you find this information very important, you're learning something about it, just hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody.